Hello, my friends. It has been a while. It's been a weird beginning to the year. I have not had remote, and I say beginning to the year, we're already at the end of the first quarter. But I haven't had a lot of I don't know what the word is, just a lot of sort of output lately. So, but I was chatting with someone who was very smart, and they were asking me what was up with my channel, and I said, I don't have anything really very much to say right now, and she said, we'll just have some fun. So that's what I'm going to do, and I thought I would just have some fun by showing you some recent decks that have arrived into my collection. And I'm going to start with sort of a curiosity, really, because I don't know a whole lot about it. And then we'll finish with my favorite of the bunch right now, or my favorite tarot of the bunch right now. So I got this deck in a trade, and this is the Classico Tarrocco di Marsiglia. And I don't know if it did not have in its case the little card that tells you a little bit about what's up with the deck, or if it just because it was a trade it didn't make it in. Although the person I traded with was sort of meticulous about the trade. So I traded my Minchiati Etruria for this because I just knew I wasn't ever really going to do anything with it. I don't think the person that I traded with was delighted with it ultimately. And, this wasn't sort of a deck that I was super excited about when I walked through it too. But, that's... both of us, I think, had decks that we weren't really singing with, and so we decided to trade and see, and, I probably jive a little bit more with this. So, there's not a whole lot to say about this deck because I don't know a whole lot about it. It is an Il Meneghello, but it is not the card stock that I love. This is more like the card stock of the Sibilla deck of theirs that I have. So it's very, very glossy. So now I'm not going to be able to get the... There you go. So super glossy. It's almost... it just reminds me of photo paper. And that's actually very much like the back of the Sibilla deck that I have. Now, anyone who sort of has been around my channel knows that I'm not a super fan of glossy cards. I recognize why people make glossy cards because the colors really pop without a lot of color correction. But because a lot of my readings are done by video, I just, the glare is problematic. So that's a thing. But it's a pretty straight up Marseille deck. There's not a whole lot to say about it. Coloration's a little different. I do like that it has sort of an aged quality to it that is attractive. So I don't know. I mean, if it's the Marsiglia title suggests that it's an Italian version of a Marseille deck, Marsiglia. Excuse me. I start talking and I start coughing. So yeah, it's a. I'm trying to be polite. I mean, who cares, right? It's a straight up Marseille style deck. I have a lot more interesting or attractive Marseille decks, so this wasn't a must have. But I thought, oh, why not? Let me see what it looks like in person. I kind of hoped that it would have better cardstock, or that would have that more art cardstock that Il Meneghello is known for, but it doesn't. So there's nothing, from what I can see, super revolutionary about this. It's, if you've seen a Marseille deck, you've seen this. It's just pretty straight up. What you see is what you get. Excuse me, gosh. I talked all day on the phone and I was fine. Which is probably why. No, I'm not. And I won't even go through all the pips because they are exactly what you'd expect. So, the wands look like this. The cups look like that. The swords are this typical French style swords. And the coins are the coins. So, not nothing that I'm like, that I ached for, that's filling a giant, tarot collection need that I wanted. But it's not a bad thing. I probably would have been more disappointed if I had bought it. And in fact, the Minchiati deck that I traded this for was also something I had gotten in a trade. So, it wasn't something that was super, devastating. I can't remember if I showed this in any videos before. I know I've used it, but I just thought I would share this too. This is a Sibilla deck. It's actually artistically one of my favorite, because of the art. It just has sort of a freshness to it that's a little more pleasing on the eye, than the traditional everyday oracle. That is the one I really use most, because this is not playing card size. So the everyday oracle it's much smaller, and that makes it easier to do a reading with. So this is, you can see how much bigger this is. But with that said, it's really pleasing, and I do enjoy using this. So it's all in Italian. It does come with 2 significator cards, if you want to include them. That's not traditional. But the art I really just find pretty beautiful. Let me see if I can get a better capture on the light here. Some of the titles are a little bit different, and there are keywords, although I can't read what they are. So this is artista, which would be man of letters, traditionally. Rune, this is marriage. So the titles are a little bit different. Because the thing that I will say about this deck that I don't like, well, there's 2 things. One is the script font is a little bit more difficult to read, especially when it's upside down. And that's important because the cards they're a little sort of hazier and a little less specifically, like this is the doctor, but it's easy to get that confused with sickness, for example, because of the way the image is depicted. But that's a small quibble, and I go through phases where I'm not really reading a lot, but when I'm sort of on it a lot, I get the titles pretty fast. And with Sibilla, because it does work really quickly, I generally want to see the title as quickly as I can, so that I'm formulating the what I call the math. And then others like lightness are pretty standard. Haughtiness, superbia, great consolation, falsita. But I just, I think one of the things that we've been spoiled with in very many, in tarot and now Lenormand, is the variety of decks that are out there. And so you start to long for that variety with other systems like Kipper, say, and there's a couple Kipper decks out there, but when it comes to Sibilla, there's really the 2 that Los Scarabeo offers, the Everyday Oracle and the Gypsy Oracle, and other than that, there's 2 Del Negro decks, which is this one and the La Magica Sibilla, which I have showed in another video. And that one's really beautiful too. So this is actually the sickness card, I believe. So yeah, I think that it's nothing's perfect, but you sort of always wish you had the variety, you know what I mean? And so I do quite like this one, and I do like just having options available. I do wish it were smaller. I wish the script were a little clearer, but I like it a lot. Now this, for a while, seemed to be pretty easy to get, but I did have to do a little hunting to find it. When I was starting my journey, I had the Everyday Oracle, and then, excuse me, I bought this And this was just as easy to get a hold of at that point through Tarot BG. It seems like they're out of stock, and I don't know if this is, harder to find now or what, but so I'm not even telling you the title, so this may not even be very helpful, but this is a writer, not writer, journey, prison, jealousy, speranza, hope, lookout, military person. This is young woman, I believe. The title here is Virgin, but I believe it's young woman. Despair. So one of the things that happens when I'm not reading Sibilla, as much as I actually have to go back and sort of relearn the Italian words, because use it or lose it, you're going to lose it. And I'm already sort of having to think more closely about the Italian words here. I do have one of the everyday oracles that I wrote the titles on in English. I get to a point when I'm, actively reading where I don't need them. But if I'm not as actively reading, I haven't done a Sibilla reading in a few weeks. So I need to go and refresh my Italian. And I will say that again, for someone who is like learning the Italian words, they're a little bit, these cards are probably a little bit less helpful because the images are so different. In the Everyday Oracle, in the Gypsy Fortune Telling cards, the images are a little bit different, but they're similar enough. This is death, and it's almost, it's universally a coffin, so when you futz with the images, it is a little bit more of a stretch, right? So you have to sort of learn, but and that's important in Sibilla for me, at least, because one of the things that I like about it so much is how fast, I'm able to sort of make the connections. When I did my comparison video of Sibilla and Tarot, one of the things I talked about was, the answers seem to be pretty similar a lot of the time, but the way it's delivered and the amount of work that goes into getting the answer is different, and Tarot can be a little bit more work. So this is the Wychwood Oracle, which is definitely a Kelly made me do it moment. And in fact, I didn't put this back in order. It does have an order, but it's not like Tarot where you need the order for it to be interesting as a walkthrough. So Kelly did a walkthrough of this, and I went to buy it, but I was in the middle of moving, and I said, whatever, I can't. So I didn't. And then I went back after I'd moved, and it was sold out, of course. So I emailed them, and they said, we're getting more in stock. We'll email you, and so... they did, and I got it, and it was really lovely packaging. There was I wish I had taken it out now that I'm here, a fortune telling fish, which you can see on Kelly's channel. So this is it's a fortune telling deck, much like Sibilla and Lenormand, and what am I thinking of? Kipper. It's a really cool little deck. It actually has sort of a quality of like the Gypsy Witch fortune telling cards, for example, and even the Carte Divinatoire de la Grail, which I find a very solemn deck for me. I really love the art, but I have not done a lot of readings with it because when I lay the cards out, there's just this sort of funereal quality to it that I'm sort of like over. It's just like a lot. But this one is kind of fun, and so it comes with some cards that tell you what each of the cards means. Although, by and large, I think you could read this pretty intuitively. Again, they're not in order, but this just has a really fresh and old-fashioned quality at the same time. I love the black and white art, and I like the choices they made. And I like, I just like that it has, it feels sort of like Halloween in a way, and aptly starting with the witch here in a very sort of folksy witch to it, and very Halloween style witch. The backs are really lovely too. So you've got a sun card, a chaos card. Oh, the other deck I was trying to think of was the Oracle of Reflections, l'Oracle des Reflets. So this does have a lot in common with Lenormand, but there's some different qualities here. We have the owl. You've got a lady and a gentleman card. A flame. It's nice that the names of the cards are on them too. For example, this is the river. It would have been hard for me to not read that as a road. But it's and I like that there's titles. There's one for sort of each of the elements. There's a cup, I think a dagger, and then this sort of tarot suits are kind of in here. Air for the feather, for example, coins. And in fact, if you look closely, it has like pentacles on it, so it has like a little tip of the hat to tarot. The black cat. Now this is interesting because you couldn't, if you read Sibilla, the cat is falseness, it's lies. That annoys cat lovers, but I think the meaning on this one, in this deck, is actually a little bit more kind to felines. Let's see. Where is it? 13. Your luck will change. That's what it means. And this does, the meanings have reversals in here. This card kind of reminds me of the Oracle of Oddities, I think is the deck I'm thinking of. The Trickster, the Rat, the Horseshoe, the Wand, there's the Dagger, the Eye, the Eye, the Compass, my arm is always in the way, the Key, there's your Gentleman, the Lord, and there's the lady earlier, a beautiful tree, a moon, a door, the wolf, the heart, the anchor, the mask I really like, the stranger, good Billy Joel, and the crown, and then finally the hand. So I haven't worked with this too much. I did do a weekly reading with it on my Instagram, but who knows? When it comes to sort of reading in general, again, I haven't been doing a whole lot, but it's a cool deck. I did edge it because you kind of have to with these things, right? I wanted to edge it in purple because of the back, but I don't have a purple marker. And again, I think the meanings of the cards are there for you on the meaning cards. But if you don't want to use them, I think you could easily do the math yourself. If you have a sense of like, what does this mean in context? So again, I think questions really help with that too. And if you do read Lenormand or any other system, you probably could easily just transfer what you know from there. But sort of a wolf, an eye, and a door. So what I would see here is that you're sort of hunting for an opportunity. Get this actually in frame. The wolf I think of as a predator or a hunter. The eye is literally looking, and the door is sort of the thing you walk through. So you're on the prowl for an opportunity that's gonna be that's gonna open a door for you. So there's like an opportunistic quality there. The coins, the black cat, and the anchor. And so here, if we take the card's definition from the thing, this means your luck will change. And this sort of suggests to me that, you're actually going to end up in a more stable financial place if you haven't been. And I say you haven't because there's only 3 coins. The cat means your luck will change. And then the anchor is sort of a suggestion of stability. And of course, if you read Lenormand, that's sometimes the war card. The lady, the stranger, and the heart. Well, that's pretty clear, isn't it? There's your tall, dark stranger sort of bringing you love or taking your heart away. The flame, death, and the snake. Here's an interesting one, right? So we're gonna sort of shed some light on the end of some dishonesty potentially. So it's just a really, I'm a fan of this kind of like quick, fun reading style, and this has an air of Sibylla to it, and Oracle of Reflections, which of course was the Oracle deck that really started me down the path of even like looking at oracles, because up until that point I had found them really frustrating because they didn't seem to have any system. So I really like that deck, and it is back in stock, at least as of the time I'm shooting this video. And then finally, I'm going to zoom out for this one because it's large. This is something I've, had on my eye on for a while. I thought for some reason, not for some reason, it has the quality of it, that it was Il Meneghello, and I couldn't find it, and also I was spelling the name wrong. So this is Tarocchi Fine Dalla Torre in Bologna, known colloquially, I can't even speak, colloquially as the Fine della Torre. And this actually comes from the Tarot Museum in Italy. And I could not figure out how to get it. And it was actually Patrick Fogarty who pointed me towards Arnel Ondo's site. And if I had gone back, so I initially saw this on Elle from Sacred Seeds channel. And then just, as things do, other things came up. And she says right in her video where she got it. And if I had, went back and looked at it, I would have seen it. But anyway, this is a deck that has been sitting on Kelly's bookcase for ages, and every time I think, boy, I really, really want that deck, and then I would like half-heartedly search for it and think maybe it's out of stock, because evidently there were only 200 copies of it created, which I guess for a tarot deck is a fair amount, especially for something as sort of niche as like a historical reproduction deck. So I worried that I wouldn't even really be able to get it. Sorry, my battery's running out. I need to just... There we go. At any rate, I did manage to get my hands on it. So this is an interesting deck. First of all, it comes in, a really exceptionally sort of charming way. And it was wrapped in paper when I got it. And it's got the gold seal. It is very Il Meneghello. So it comes in this wooden box. I think the earlier editions actually were stained wood. This is just raw wood. But you get to slide the lid open, which is a very satisfying feeling. And then the deck comes inside with an English and Italian little introduction, which is actually really interesting. And then the deck inside. Now, this is supposedly supposed to say which deck I have, but I literally cannot read what that says, so I have no idea, and it doesn't really matter to me. But the history of the deck is really interesting. So this was what you would call a tarocchini, or Elle does a great job of explaining all of this stuff, so I won't go into all of that detail. But essentially, it was a mini tarot. So to the 2 through 5 of each suit was not included. So sort of like a PK deck, and happily in this recreation, they literally recreated what would have been the cards that we wouldn't have had, so that you can use it as a full deck. And then there were a couple missing cards that they recreated. I think the Queen of Cups and Coins were both missing. So, I mean, first things first, like, there's just something really special about the experience of sort of like, it came with this sort of like paper straw in the box, which is, it just has a very sort of lovely, thoughtful quality to it. And the cardstock is so yummy, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, and then the backs. Like, these are some of the best back. And this is the original back. Just love it. Like, it, if I were going to read for like a Valentine's Day event, I think this is the deck I would take. The cardstock is similar to the Corte dei Tarocchi, which is an Il Meneghello deck. A little bit different, but oh my god, it shuffles so... I meelle in her video actually does riffle shuffle it. But I haven't tried that yet because I actually have very small hands. It's just got such a satisfying feel, and I'll demonstrate that for you. So a couple, the 2, 3, 4, 5 of each suit had to be recreated, but they did such a beautiful job with it, and I'm so happy because I wouldn't have bought it otherwise. I wouldn't have used it because it just feels incomplete because I know that if I'm just sort of looking for full tarot decks, right? It's got a very handmade quality to me, which again is something I love, and it's just great. So we'll walk through it quickly. I mean, it is a pip deck, so. And the cards the majors were not numbered originally, but at some point someone penciled them in and they left them in. And what they did was they digitally cleaned them up, which I think is really cool too. But not so much that it looks, like it was manipulated. For the most part, they just cleaned it and tidied it up. So here's your Fool, which is actually number 22. Now this is very it's very Italian, So this style wise actually feels like it has more in common with like the Sforza decks, the Visconti decks, rather than a Marseille. Although they do have the curved swords of a Marseille, and the Sforzas don't. But we'll just walk through quickly. I love the color. It's just such a unique, the stigmata on the Pope's hands. It's just like a unique palette for this kind of deck. I love also the Lover's card. Like the look on the face of the woman is like, no thank you, which cracks me up. So the color palette's really just gorgeous. And unusual and vivid, and the way that they printed this so beautifully, I have to tell you, like it's such a gorgeous deck. It's one thing to see it on video. If you haven't seen it in person, it's just a completely different experience. This is Strength, so this has a very sort of old-fashioned Italian style Strength card, still at 11. Your Hangman. The majors do not have titles. Temperance, but if you're familiar with any system of tarot, these will for the most part be pretty clear to you what they are. And of course, if all decks look the same, why have more than one? So here's the Star. Again, this seems to have more in common. The Star, the Moon, and the Sun all seem to have more in common with the Sforza, the Visconti decks. In terms of their format. And here's Judgment, and then the World. Now the pips are interesting because they were recreated. So they did the 2, 3, 4, 5 did not exist. So you'll see how effortlessly how beautifully they made it work. So this is the Ace. The aces were all there, but then you get into the 2. So the 2, 3, 4, and 5 all did not exist. But the 6 and the 7 did, the 8, 9, 10. So you can see how beautifully they fit together as a collection of a suit, So and there's such a vibrancy to they really did a beautiful job cleaning up the pips because they just sort of like leap off of the cardstock. It's kind of beautiful. And then you get the quartz. Now, the quartz are also not labeled, of course, and it can be, in the Italian decks, it can be a little difficult to tell who's who. So, like, here's a quick little primer. Your page, or whoever, in this deck, the page of Swords and Wands is a boy, and the page of Cups and Coins is a lady, a chambermaid. But the page character is always standing. The knight is always on horseback. The queen is always sitting, and the king is always sitting. So if you just remember, your page is standing, your knight's on horseback, your queen and king are sitting, because sometimes the kings look younger than the page. So there's that. So that's the quartz. Then the suit of cups again is such a vivid, beautiful. It feels to me like this was done with wax. Crayon with wax pastels, oil pastels, but they just kind of leap off the card in such a gorgeous way, and they're really colorful. They're very, very simple, in the way of Italian decks. There's not a lot of arabesques. There's not a lot of flourish. You know, to me that's not a big deal because I don't really, I'm not a super visual reader, so those arabesques by and large don't mean a whole lot to me. What's most important is that I know the number of the card I'm looking at initially. So here's your chambermaid for the cups. Again, she's standing, so you know she's not the queen. There's your knight on horseback, your queen. This was a card they had to recreate because the queen of cups was missing, and it fits right in beautifully. And there's your king sitting. The swords, again, the 2, 3, 4, 5 had to be recreated. But as we get into the 6, you can see they just look identical. You know, so it's so great. This is such a lovely deck. So I want, you know, once you've seen the suit, you've seen the suit. So there's your page, knight, queen, and king. And that king looks super young and pensive. And then the coins are very simple too. Again, recreated. And then this was originally there. This is Carte Fine Dalla Torre in Bologna. There's your chambermaid, your knight, and then the queen also had to be recreated in the king. So let me just shuffle this for you quickly, just so you can get a sense of like the sound of it. So satisfying. It's just lovely, like swooshy sounds to it. It's like a breeze through the autumn leaves. I love it. And it's a very sad, you know, I tend to, when I'm on conference calls sometimes, to just sit and shuffle, you know, as a way of like avoiding checking my email while I'm on a call. So, but just adore this deck. So, that's that. That's the Tarocchi Fine Dalla Torre in Bologna, which is very fun to say. And a couple decks that have recently joined my crew here behind me. And as always, I hope this was interesting, and I hope you're doing well, and we'll see what's up for the next video. Be good.